What's going on, Internet? Happy pre-Thanksgiving. We'll see how many people join me on their lunch break going live, 3 in the afternoon. I don't know if this is the ideal time for the Internet, but it's when Kyle Anslem was available. We're gonna go deep on all the geopolitics. Here's an update on the coffee maker. I'm going through about a pot of coffee a day. I mean, the coffee I'm making, way more. I don't know why I was ever wasting time or money going down the street for coffee. I can't tell you how many times in the afternoon I wanted a cup of coffee and I was just stuck behind all these school kids coming and going, just cursing out public schools and the fact that they clog up the roads in the afternoon. But now I got fresh hot coffee all day. I like the sound of waking up my neighbors when you brew the thing. By the way, I'm not pitching a coffee maker here. There's no coffee sponsor on the show as of yet. Maybe down the line we'll get some good beans going or something. But is a pot of coffee a day too much coffee? I'm pacing. I think I'm going to try and hold it there. I'm going to hold the line at about a pack of Zins a day and one pot of coffee and see how long. Will that give me a heart attack or is that keeping my heart healthy? Because I'm fluctuating like I'm running a marathon at all times. So I feel like this is, in anything, an investment in heart health. I feel healthier than ever. I feel great. All right, let's get into some news topics. Gonna, rant and say stupid things for about a half hour, and then we'll have Kyle on for all the actual information about what's going on in the world. But that doesn't mean that I can't spend a half hour just speculating and pulling information out of my ass. All right, let's start with this. People are starting to drum up these rumors about how Donald Trump is all tired now. He's an old man. He's got venular problems. And listen, I'm not saying Trump's not aging, but that guy's on television every 5 minutes. He does more press conferences than I podcast, and he's still just picking fights with everybody. I think he's doing okay. I'd like to see old man Trump. Hopefully, listen, I at this point, I'm so not a Trump fan. I would enjoy it if Trump went the way of Biden and we're having full-scale Donald Trump dementia moments, just starts admitting to crimes on live television. Let me tell you about the party I had with Epstein. And they got to pull him right off. They got to pretend like somebody hacked the teleprompters. Let me tell you about the crypto money my family's making. More money than anyone president's ever made on anything. I would love it. I would love old man dementia Donald Trump rolling out there, going for a third term while he's shuffling in his. But I think he's fine for now. Can we chalk that up to press nonsense that after they covered up for Biden for 4 years, now they're going to pretend to have a freak out over Donald Trump's age and health? I think the guy's still doing okay. He was pardoning turkeys yesterday and then probably did another 9 hours on television after that. Herbie Hancock letting us know that he both has a healthy erection. He's now moved on from docking and that he's advocating for a scrotum party and letting everybody know that you should take the opportunity to pull on your dick. All right. Herbie, I appreciate your enthusiasm for the status of my penis and the fact that you're the first to hop into the chat to let everyone know it. Chef Lewis, Body Brain Lattes keep me going. There you go. Support Louis J. Gomez and his coffee endeavor. And get the body brains going, get the mushrooms going, get the high testosterone going. I respect it. All right, next news story that I got for you guys is let's talk into them walking away from Doge. Are you guys still committed to Donald Trump's 4D chest? That this guy's going to be a good Republican? I mean, for all the people that were talking when Elon Musk left, no, Doge is going to keep going. They're going to do the honorable work, and they're going to take out all of the government overreach and spending, all the money that's just going to the CIA and Democrat causes that are undermining all of us, all this fraud and abuse. Well, they're disbanding the thing. Doesn't have a leader anymore. But you've got the Trump administration is saying that the principles remain alive. As we continue to spend more than anybody ever, we don't push for any budget cuts, and we don't actually have any public efforts in any capacity whatsoever to dig into the fraud, waste, and abuse of government. We're not having any conversations with the Pentagon. But you can just trust us. You can trust us that even though we've done none of those things, the principles remain in our heart. And we'll continue to do the things that we're not doing. There you have it. The Trump loyalists. Are you guys still standing by this? Are you still standing by tariffs bringing back American jobs and that Donald Trump secretly is working on an agenda to clean up the deep state? Now that the Comey thing failed, we're going to get into that in a minute, mostly just because they're sloppy and it wasn't on the merits of the case. But between the Comey case failing, them trying to get rid of the Epstein stuff, rolling back tariffs, because they were increasing pricing. And obviously, when things start getting more expensive, people stop listening to you and just go, nope, things cost more. Make it cost less. I don't want this costing more. But amidst all the things that Donald Trump is walking away from, apparently we're moving on from Doge, but he's got a solemn promise that the principles remain alive. All right, here we go. Let's take a couple comments here. Christine Grubisic. I, too, am the heavy nicotine and coffee program. It's definitely heart healthy. I stand by it. We'll be the last ones to get dementia. Runaway Slav wants to remind everybody about Fega's Big Dick Hot Chocolate, and that in his opinion, it's actually better than Lewis's Broady Brain Coffee. And then here's also Runaway Slav as well. Trump said we'll be winning so much he'll be asking us for stop winning in a speech. It was never a joke. I blame the Jew Nation. Why are you blaming Jew Nation on Donald Trump? How's Jew Nation? Donald Trump's no Jew. I understand he's got some Jews working for him, but you think Israel or someone else threatened him? He was actually going to come in with the good ideas? You think tariffs were a good idea? How you spinning that story that it's entirely the Jews' fault that Donald Trump, that was the Comey case? Was that somehow a Jews' fault also? All right, and now on topic, we've got Bassett says inflation rise has nothing to do with tariffs, and I just hear Bart say, wasn't me, had nothing to do with us. If you think prices are going up, it's got nothing to do with the thing that we did that would drive up prices. And now, are you guys furious about this? Because this is the same article. This is from The Hill. Trump signed an executive order earlier this month cutting tariffs on scores of products in a bid to lower some grocery prices. The products no longer subject to tariff include coffee, tea, beef, bananas, tropical fruit, wood, and iron. And guys, forget about higher prices. Those could be American jobs, right? I mean, Donald Trump is turning his back on the American people, and that he's walking away from driving up prices that supposedly you could get American jobs in the future. You Trump loyalists, you must be furious with Donald Trump. I mean, sure, it undermines everything he wants to do if he can't disguise the fact that prices won't rise on behalf of his tariffs. But there you have it. And then also, every imported cup of coffee is probably more profits for a coffee shop, which is more money in the economy. But someone could figure out how to grow coffee here. Those could be American coffee pickers. Are you guys furious about all this? Is that an admission of prices going up on behalf of the tariffs? All right. Enough beating up on Donald Trump. Let's look at some of the Democratic bench, because it's always nice to remember that the Democrats are dumber. Trump's messing up all over the board, but it's nice to get a reminder of who the Democrats are. Runaway Slav. Trump said we'll be doing, I already read that one. Trump is a Jew. He became one in 2018. In his second book, he talked about his Kabbalah instructor. Is Donald Trump, in fact, a Jew? I've yet to hear that storyline. I know his daughter converted, but does anyone else want to confirm? Is that just what happens in your mind the second when someone starts doing something that you don't like? You just go, well, they must secretly be Jewish, or maybe they're like schizophrenic, and every time they do something that you don't like, it's actually the Jewish part of their personality. All right, let's take a look at this video, which is Mamdani being asked about the fact that he went to the Oval Office, showed up, charmed the pants off of Donald Trump, got the Donald Trump endorsement for New York City. Instead of Donald Trump going, all right, you dumb socialist, you want free buses, let's see how this plays out. He invites him into the Oval Office. He wishes him well. And now Mamdani's going to answer for the fact that he's cozying up to Donald Trump because, you know, the Democrats, they're supposed to hate him. They're supposed to have better ideas for how we can get free stuff than Donald Trump and his central planning. And here he is defending having called Donald Trump I think both a dictator and a fascist. Roll the clip, producer man.
President Trump is, in fact, prior to your meeting, I don't have to tell you this, President Trump repeatedly threatened to cut off federal funding to New York if you won. The president seemed to back away from that yesterday, though, in his public comments in that joint news conference that you all did. He said, I don't think that's going to happen. I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. Do you believe him when he says that?
No, I believe the president in the conversation that we had, and I will continue to make the case, both to the president and to the country at large, about the needs of New Yorkers. Because what I found, frankly, is that New Yorkers have grown tired of being asked to believe in a system that has delivered very little for them. They're tired of a politics that expects everything from them while delivering little. And what they want now is a politics that can see the scale of the crisis in front of it and actually start to work together to deliver on that crisis.
You know, you ran a campaign, though, saying that President Trump had not delivered on his promise.
I think I just started this from the wrong spot.
Anything
I think it was the
that
right
happened
spot, and then
in
I
that
accidentally pulled it back. So let's just... actually, I have the timestamp. 6:28. See, producer man's not going to fuck up my flow anymore. I've got hacks to work around him.
The conversation that I had with the president was that we were not shy about the places of disagreement, about the politics that has brought us to this moment. And we all...
It's easier than explaining it. So, Mr. Mayor-elect, just to be very clear, do you think that President Trump is a fascist?
And after President Trump said that, I said yes. And
so you do?
And that's something that I've said in the past. I say it today. And I think what I appreciated about the conversation that I had with the president was that we were not shy about the places of disagreement, about the politics that has brought us to this moment. And we also wanted to focus on what it could look like to deliver on a shared analysis of an affordability crisis for...
All right, so just two takeaways. I think it's important to keep in mind just how much of a dumb television show this is, and that nobody stands by anything that they're saying. They will not give you the free goods that they promised you, and they'll even cozy up to people that they think are fascists. They can somehow hold both views in their head as being accurate. I did not lie when I said that that was the most evil person ruining our country and that we're no longer in a democracy. I still stand by that, but yet I will just work with the guy because, being a fascist isn't that bad. It's totally true that the last statement was 100% true. But even so, it's not that big of a deal. It's both 100% true that I call the guy a fascist, but then also it's just not that big of a deal. I mean, the whole thing is that I make really grand claims, and so I made some really grand claims, and then who cares? It's all just one big show. That's all it is. I also just love this line of this new thing of the affordability crisis, but let's play a little bit more.
New Yorkers.
You've also said in the past that President Trump has engaged in a, quote, attack on our democracy. You've called him a despot. Do you still believe President Trump is a threat to the democracy?
Everything that I've said in the past, I continue to believe. And that's the thing that I think is important in our politics, is that we don't shy away from where we have disagreements, but we understand what it is that brings us to that table.
So then you don't really believe the guy's a threat to democracy if it's just a minor point of disagreement. Hey, I'm telling you, if you let that guy out of jail, he's going to rape my entire family. And then you have dinner with the guy and your family, and people are like, didn't you say that this guy was going to rape your whole family? I'd stand by that as being 100% true, but we're not going to shy away from our disagreements when we have to work together. Then you don't believe this to be true. I mean, where's the autism in anyone else in the media to just be like, you can't have this one both ways, buddy? I mean, it was just one big television show? That's all it is? Oh, yeah, last week I was playing the Eels. I said a bunch of crazy shit. You don't, listen, are we actually just going to hold me to the words that come out of my mouth? I know the entire job is that I try and speak words better than other people, but we can't actually hold me to things that I've said in the past. All right. The other just big thing, and this is also now on the Republican side, but everyone's talking about this affordability crisis. And I think we have to somehow explain to the people the affordability crisis is more of a government spending crisis. It's an inflation problem. Isn't it amazing that the general public was finally becoming aware that there's this problem and it's called inflation, and that when government keeps promising you free stuff, suddenly things are more expensive? I mean, a couple years ago, you would have had to have taken an economics class and learned about the concept of inflation. It was not a household thing, or people thought that it was some sort of just conceptual problem. And then all of a sudden, prices start going up a whole bunch. Media starts reporting about inflation, and people start waking up. Oh, wow. I guess just spending and handing out free money is not a working system. And now it's a clever pivot of, let's not call it inflation, let's call it an affordability crisis. As if we could just print and hand people more money, then they could go afford the things, which then ignores why it's unaffordable, because you keep printing and handing them money, which has the thing called inflation. No, there's no problem with inflation. There's a problem that people can't afford things. So we just have to make more money available. And then they'll have more money available, and then they can go purchase the thing. And what about the side of equation when the prices go up, and then they still can't afford it because of inflation? Well, we're not talking about the inflation. We're talking about the affordability crisis, which really just makes it sound like as long as government will pay for it for you or hand you the free money, then you can have it, and ignores what the actual problem is, which is we have a government spending crisis. And this is the problem with the Republicans buddying up with this guy, is that even the Republicans now are going with this language of it's not a spending and inflation problem. The problem is that we have a affordability crisis. Adam Sutton, hey Robbie, I was at the Poughkeepsie show and got a chance to say you did great real quick, but you and Chris and Dave really crushed. Thanks so much for a great night. You are welcome. Come see me live. Got one more headlining show this year, which is out in Denver, Colorado. You can go to robbernsteincomedy.com and find those dates, which are listed inaccurately, but if you click the link, you will find the actual, they're off by a day. It's a problem with the website. I'm trying to get it fixed. It shouldn't be as much of a problem than it is, but everything in my life is somewhat retarded to keep me confused, because I already wasn't good with dates, and now my website guy is just making it a little bit trickier for me so that I have to work extra hard not to show up to locations on the wrong date. But if you want to come skiing with me, shoot me a message. As long as you're a good skier. I'm not doing the bunny slopes. I want the people that know the woods and can show me the good spots in the woods. I love a local guide. I like it when you show up to a mountain, you get to ski with the people that already know the mountain. But you want to come out for Steamboat or for Inga's Lounge, and then closing out the year opening for Sam Tripoli in Jersey. Come out, Jersey people. Kazarp. Trying Robbie, telling everyone in the POTP Discord to watch Run Your Mouth. Yeah, spread the word. Not enough of the Part of the Problem fans are checking out this show. Left-wing nationalists. It's in everyone's interest for Mamdani, Trump, and even Hochul to work together. Oh, and that's coming from left-wing nationalist. So I guess that's parody. Vocabulary in the making. Was I not allowed to say it's been a shooting of military personnel at the White House, or was it accidentally removed? I don't know what you're talking about, so I can't really give you an answer there. Well, we're cooking on the live chat for 3 p.m. Big Simmies, holy shit, I can see right through Robbie right now with that hoodie green combo. No, it's because I'm Jewish and I have no soul, so you can actually see through it with better cameras, because I upgraded the camera, which is why my face looks so silky smooth right now. And since the camera's so good, you can see through the fact that I have no soul as a Jewish person. All right, vocabulary in the making. Stupid question probably, but why are there 2 live streams that's exactly the same at the same time? I can't answer that question, but I can tell you that it is a relic from the COVID era, and that the Run Your Mouth podcast channel will be going down in 2026. I will leave the archive there. We'll do a farewell show specific for that channel. And then the only place that you will be able to catch this show will be on my website, on Run Your Mouth, on the Robbie the Fire channel, and also on Spotify. Adam Sutton, I'm way too Jewish to ski. Got to catch you at Tripoli. That sounds awesome. Yeah, definitely come out for that. It's going to be a fun night. Runaway Slav trying to repost the fact that Trump has never denied being a Jewish president, whatever. Yeah, I ignored it the first time. Bring me better proof of the fact that Trump's an actual Jew. I don't believe it. Rob, do you plan on releasing clips from the Poughkeepsie show? I remember you saying you planned to record it and saw a camera posted up at the bar. Probably not. I have 10... There's 10 minutes of stand-up that's going up, and then I'm moving back to the news. But I love the engagement, and I love that you guys are hanging out in the chat, and that you're so interested in my stand-up. I have... It's already edited. I got to do another edit on it, but there's a 10-minute mockumentary... No, it's like 15-minute mockumentary going out from the California run, of which I have, like, 7 or 8 minutes of stand-up. There's about another 10 minutes of stand-up that I'm looking to put out because it's kind of topical jokes that I've been working on all year. The Poughkeepsie shows were great, but I don't know that they were the most electric shows that I'm looking to put out, so I will probably bury that footage in my personal archive. All right, let's go. We got more stuff going on. All right, we've got the judge dismisses case against ex-FBI Director James Comey and AG Tish James. Both of these cases were not dismissed with prejudice, which means they can be rebrought. My guess is that the Letitia James case will be rebrought and that the James Comey one is probably going away, or they might retry it, but it's definitely not off to a good start. Now, in typical complete bullshit fashion, the merits of these cases were not looked at. They were not tried. Nobody looked at the case and saw James Comey lying to Congress, nor was he tried for his involvement in Crossfire Hurricane and bogging Donald Trump down and pretending that he was a Russian asset in his first term. Nobody's looking at any of that behavior in any capacity. From what I understand, and I did go off on this on part of the problem quite a bit, so I certainly hope I had it right, the prosecutor was wrongfully appointed, and that those appointments need, I guess, to be confirmed by Congress or to be done by a judge. They can only be temporary 120-day appointments, and what they did was they reappointed her to a second 100-day term, and so on the basis that the prosecutor was wrongfully appointed, the cases got dismissed. So none of the actual heart of the matter ever saw a court, ever saw a judge. Now, with that said, the prosecutor was never previously a prosecutor. I think she was Trump's personal lawyer for something, and it sounds like she made other errors in the case, which included not actually presenting the grand jury with the final document of what the charges would be. She only showed them an earlier document, and then she also promised them that there would be additional evidence presented at trial that wasn't being presented there. I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand all the procedural stuff, but apparently even if the case hadn't been thrown out because she was wrongfully appointed, it likely would have been thrown out on the basis, the Comey one, on the basis that it was handled incorrectly. It does seem like it was a little bit of a slop job in that Donald Trump wanted it done. The earlier prosecutor, I think, didn't think they had enough of a case, and they just weren't on top of it enough. And Donald Trump said, go get this done. They kind of rushed it through at the end to beat the statute of limitations. It just kind of speaks to what we spoke to or about during the claims that the election had been stolen from Donald Trump. This is the first time they ran against Biden. And it is possible. There were certainly, we spoke about it quite a bit on this show. There were a lot of things that looked really off in that election. But at the end of the day, Donald Trump was president. He had all the resources to prevent them stealing it, and he could have had all the resources to actually hire better lawyers and prove that it had been. And the fact that he was unable to do any of that kind of makes him a loser. And this is some loser shit, too. Come on, I thought we were going to go after the deep state. And if you were going to go after the deep state for us and actually be honest and interested in the Epstein storyline or any of these other storylines, you could have at least taken out your political enemies. You could have at least gone after some of the people that did you dirty. And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of gusto in this administration to actually make a good effort of cleaning up the deep state or going after these individuals. And they're really not off to a good start when the first case gets dismissed. For all you people, 4D chess, Trump's on top of everything. He's a great operator. He's going to get all these people. Well, there's another loss in the books for you of just sloppy operations. All right, let's plug two companies real quick, and then I'll hop back into the comments. First is, like I said, this last year in Port Store, I put it out there that people were able to buy sponsor passes, value buy. You could have brought as many people as you wanted, tax deductible. You get the reading here on the show, and met some really cool people with some great services. So firstly is if you're out in the Massachusetts area, you're looking for a good painter, you're looking for a guy who's a big Grateful Dead fan and supports the Run Your Mouth Enterprises of America, go hit up Eagan Painting out of Mansfield, Massachusetts. And then this guy sponsored my show up in New Hampshire. But if you're looking for a book for kids that will teach them about financial literacy, I believe this book is in part based on The Richest Man in Babylon, which is a pretty good, it's a somewhat adult read, The Richest Man in Babylon, but it's basically about saving your money and having and accruing interest on your money. And so this is a child's book to teach your kids about some better spending habits than taking that $20 that grandma gives you, putting it in a bank account, and then saving it for high school so that you got weed money, which, that wasn't bad savings by me as a kid. But if you got young kids in your life, I'm going to guess like the 10 to 13 age type of range, and you want them to read some stories, maybe learn some financial literacy, I recommend The Richest Boy in Athens, and all of those links are in the episode description. Let's take a couple comments, and then let's move on to our next topics. Atlian. Rob, have you heard Bonjingo wants to go after Massey for not playing ball? I haven't heard that yet. But that is juicy if true. Kash Patel threatened to investigate one of Massey's staff members. Wouldn't that be incredible for all the people that they could go after and all the lawsuits that they could open? They just start really digging into Massey and Massey's operation, which I guess at the moment is the biggest thorn in his shoe, pebble in his shoe, which is mostly because he just won't vote for the nonsense like increasing spending and making the Epstein stuff just go away, and then just going, well, he's not totally on board. I need 100% compliance for everybody. We're trying to spend more than anybody and support wars in Israel for the deep state, and Massey keeps getting in the way. Runaway Slav, it is negative dimension chess. Do a dreidel because he has been a gamble in office. All right, one more comment, and then I want to cover my last couple topics. And then we got Kyle coming on. Porto Dylan. Robstein. I like that. I like the condensing of the two. That's nice. Do you think the World Jewish Congress and organized Jewry isn't an issue? In my opinion, this is a lot deeper than we give Israel a lot of money because they give our politicians money. I don't know. It's too vague of a question. I can't say I know that much about organized Jewry. And no, I don't really think organized Jewry is an issue. But, sounds to me like you've been listening to other podcasts and you had a specific agenda in that question. All right, let's move forward. I see Kyle hopped on, and so you know what? Let's bring Kyle on. Mr. Kyle, happy Thanksgiving. It's great to have you here. How you doing, bud?
Doing well, Robbie. How's it going over there?
I'm doing well. You want to take on this guy's question? If the answer there's not just an Israel problem, there's a world Jewry problem. I'm throwing you right into the mud, right up top. You don't have to address it. People throw crazy things at me at the chat. They set up these little traps. They insert their opinion, and they're like, "Hey, I think this exact same thing. Do you think this too?"
No, sometimes I think it's good to have the opportunity to say no, right? Like my opposition really it isn't even to the state of Israel. It's the special relationship the United States has with the state of Israel. And in the U.S., there is a group of Jews who support that, but certainly the overwhelming number of people who do are Christian Zionists. Some of the most belligerent supporters of Israel in this country, like Mike Huckabee, are, drape himself in Christian nationalism. And so it's just very, I guess, almost ironic that he would believe that, but that is kind of how the political dynamics work in this country. Certainly there are going to be some Jews who use their faith try to defend the state of Israel. But when that happens, you have to understand that they're defending the state of Israel and they're not actually defending their religion. And you're arguing with what Israel is doing, not with what the Jews are doing.
All right. So, I had a whole outline of specific things that I wanted to get into with you. And we're going to be a little bit out of order because, I meandered too much. I took too many comments, and there were some random Ukraine things that I wanted to cover before, I got some of your expert opinions on this stuff. But first is, I just enjoyed this little segment on CNN because, sometimes you got to check in with the people that do real news information. And obviously, All right, I'll give the short right here, and I'll let you respond to it, and then we'll play this clip. It seems to me like we're in the exact same place we've always been in with Ukraine, which is we just have to cut our losses and say we're not supporting this thing anymore, and then at that point, Zelensky will actually be forced to make concessions, and every once in a while, Donald Trump's ADD comes back to, I have to address Ukraine. He tries to say we're pulling support. These people are ungrateful. They have nothing without us, so you better actually listen to me. And then Zelensky goes, no, we actually are grateful, and then tries to lobby basically Europe to come back and get Trump to continue to send support, and it's just kind of an ongoing circle. Is that a pretty fair summary of the situation?
Yeah, people will probably spend hours listening to me explain that, and you made it funny and short, so fantastic.
Okay, so now what I'm just amused by is when Donald Trump is going off at Zelensky and calling him ungrateful. And listen, I hate to ever agree with Donald Trump at this point. Donald Trump has been so annoying and the loyalists have been, or so bad and the loyalists have been so annoying that I'm at the point that even when he gets things right, I'm like a little reluctant to compliment the guy. When he's saying that Zelensky's being ungrateful, he's being specific to a little bit like even with Israel when he goes like, this is all of our money. You guys don't really have a say here. So when you're trying to still pretend like you're the big boss in the room, understand that it's only with our money. So I don't even really want to hear your opinion or what you want to do. It's what I want to do. He's not saying that Zelensky's never said thank you because essentially he was forced to when he got bitched out at the White House the last time. But here you've got CNN responding to Donald Trump's claim that Zelensky is ungrateful in the most literal sense and saying, no, he's thanked us many times, totally unaddressing the fact that clearly when he's saying he's ungrateful, he's being like, guys, you have no leverage here. I'm telling you we're ending the war. All right, I'll roll a clip and then we can respond.
President Trump just wrote earlier on social media, something good may be happening in discussions between the U.S. and Ukraine. It comes less than 24 hours after the president appeared to fume about Ukrainian leaders showing what he called zero gratitude to the United States for its efforts
I don't
to
think this
end
is actually
the
playing.
conflict.
My
Let's
bad.
get right to CNN fact checker in chief Daniel Dale with a
Wait, I'm
fact
going to
check
pull that
on
back.
this.
Were you able to hear that,
So,
Kyle?
I was
less than
able
20
to hear it. I couldn't see it.
Oh, okay.
4 hours after the president appeared to fume about Ukrainian leaders showing what he called zero gratitude to the United States for its efforts to end the conflict. Let's get right to CNN fact checker in chief Daniel Dale with a fact check on this. So, no gratitude, Daniel. What did you find here?
I found, John, that this claim is wildly inaccurate. I found more than 70 examples, in which President Zelensky expressed gratitude to the United States, to its people, to its leaders, including President Trump. Now, people might say, well, I remember him doing this under President Biden, who he was close with. I don't remember him doing it under Trump. In fact, just under half of the examples I found were under President Trump, many of them directly to President Trump.
All right, we can just stop it there, but it's just like the ridiculousness that what the Ukraine war needs is more ceremonies from Zelensky thanking us, and it's not a pressure. It's not that Donald Trump is exerting a pressure tactic to be like, we're calling it a quits, so you better play ball with us. What we actually just need is better ceremonies from Zelensky paying tribute to Donald Trump, and then it makes sense for us to continue to support the war.
Yeah, so first off, Robbie, I have to mention the fact that CNN has a fact checker in chief weighing in on this claim is just the most absurd thing ever. Now, what I think Trump means when he says Zelensky isn't showing gratitude is that Zelensky isn't showing the flexibility that Trump needs him to show to actually end the war. He's not talking about Zelensky coming and groveling at his feet and saying, oh, we love you so much. He's talking about how when he puts out this 28-point peace plan or does anything to attempt to end the war in Ukraine, the Ukrainians and their allies in the United States immediately go to work to undermine that because they don't want the aid cut off. They want the Ukrainians to keep fighting. They know if the war is settled now, the Ukrainians are going to get an awful deal because they're losing. And so they want this thing to continue to drag on. And so Trump can't bring the war to an end, even if he's proposing. Look, in a lot of ways, it's really unfair to Ukraine what's happened to them over the, past 30 years, but particularly the past almost 4 years now. But at the same time, they are losing this war, and Russia is only asking for a small chunk more territory than they actually have. And that is an ethnic Russian part of the population. And while Ukraine will have to agree to never join NATO, we've seen over the past 3.5 years that NATO isn't willing to send their troops to Ukraine to defend Ukraine. So even if Ukraine were to join NATO, they don't have a real mutual defense pact. They just have another agreement for the West to pour in another $200 billion while Ukraine loses another million plus men in unnecessary conflict. That's all that is, right? And Russia is okay with Ukraine joining the European Union, maintaining an army of 600,000 troops. I mean, that is a sizable deterrent force, 600,000 troops. That is a lot of men in uniform. That would be the second biggest army in Europe after Russia. So, this isn't a bad deal for the Ukrainians, given the status quo. I'm not saying it's fair what's happened. I'm just saying, given the status quo, it's a pretty fair deal. So really, if people cared about the Ukrainians, they would be pushing the Ukrainians to, maybe argue for some slight modifications, try to give up less territory, maybe get some more territorial concessions from Russia in exchange for the Donbass. All those things are probably possibilities as negotiations take place, but rather they're, hyper focusing on Trump saying Zelensky hasn't shown enough gratitude, because it's an easy thing to attack the president on, because Trump does like going around the world and, when countries have like fancy sword dances and globes and big military marches in his honor. He does like, so people do believe that Trump doesn't think Zelensky hasn't said thank you. But what really I think Trump is talking about is Zelensky's inflexibility in allowing him to end this war. And that's how the Ukrainians show
the stupidity of that, if Zelensky just did better parades for Trump, then Trump would be like, you know what, let's spend more money over there. Now, before I show this next article, let's just delve into this peace plan a little bit, because from what I'm hearing is it needs to be revised. It's not a fully binding framework. The general essence of it's been agreed to by Ukraine. And there's two pieces on the table that seem to be the biggest hiccup. And once again, we're at the same place we've always been in, which is Donald Trump just has to say no more money, and then Zelensky's kind of stuck. But now we're at is essentially Donald Trump's trying to say, listen, give up the territories that they haven't conquered, and let's call it a war, and we're going to give you guys a peace guarantee. Of course, the defense guarantee, of course, they're just saying it will be a good defense guarantee with no actual statement of what it is. And then you're kind of stuck in the same problem of, well, is Russia going to agree to this if there's a security guarantee? Because that kind of brings us back to the original NATO problem of whether or not you're going to bring Ukraine into NATO. So I'm curious your thoughts on, like, if you even think that the current deal can move forward, and what exactly is being offered by way of a security guarantee.
Yeah, I guess I should say here, I don't know what the current deal is. There was the leak of Trump's initial 28-point peace plan, and then there were some conflicting reports that the Russians had written that proposal, which it's pretty clear that they didn't, because there's some things in there the Russians would certainly argue against. And while Russia was receptive to the initial 28-point peace plan, they said that they hadn't received an official version of it from the U.S. so far. But on top of that, they still had concerns and they still want to negotiate on it. So this wasn't, as so many political commentators in the U.S. has framed it, a complete giveaway to Russia or anything like that. Now, it would require Ukraine to cede the rest of the Donbass. I think at this point, Russia controls 90+% of that region. It's the two provinces in eastern Ukraine that Russia could have annexed back in 2014 and elected not to, but has been in open rebellion to Kiev since 2014 in the U.S. coup there. And so this is wild territory that was Ukraine's after the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991. For the past decade, it hasn't been under Kiev's control anyways, and they have wanted to join Russia anyways. And then Russia says that they're willing to only take the areas of southern Ukraine that they already control, which I think is kind of obvious that no matter what should happen, those are never going back to the Ukrainians anyway. So the territorial concessions aren't that major, especially when you consider Russia for the past year has been fighting for the last major city in the Donbass that they don't control. And it's now encircled. The Ukrainians have retreated. The supply lines have been cut. And so we're really at a point when you look at the battle map of the Donbass where the remaining territory that Russia doesn't control isn't particularly significant or easily defendable for the Ukrainians anyways. And so if Zelensky doesn't take this deal 6 months from now, Ukraine might not even control it anyways. You know what I mean?
What about the security guarantees? What do you think the U.S. means by that? And is that something that Russia would accept?
So I do think that Russia probably has to understand that there will be some form of security guarantees from Western states to Ukraine. I think Russia is going to be okay as long as two things happen. One, the security guarantees are vague. They're not mutual defense pacts. They don't, by definition, resemble Article 5 of the NATO treaty. But if, like, the U.S. signs an agreement with Ukraine that says something, we will provide you with support if another country invades and you didn't provoke it or something like that, I think Russia would probably understand and sign on to that. Now, the Europeans and the Ukrainians are intentionally trying to taint Trump's deal by taking what I think was probably a vague security guarantee and trying to say it has to be an Article 5 NATO-style security guarantee, which won't fly with the Russians. The Russians will have a problem with that and say no to that. So that's one of the points. And in fact, Robbie, there was the initial 28-point plan, and then Marco Rubio went to Europe and met with Ukrainian officials and European leaders, and now the plan only has 19 points. We don't know exactly which 9 points were cut. Other plans have been revised, but
I think one of the big ones was to what extent Ukraine can continue to have a military. And I'm trying to remember.
They boosted that. So the initial deal said 600,000. The new one says 800,000. At that point, I don't know if that's even going to be something Russia argues a lot about. Maybe they could meet in the middle. I think it would probably be very difficult for Ukraine to field even a 600,000 man army, much less 800,000.
All right, so let's take a look at this article, and this was today's big news, but you got Trump's defending Witkoff's leaked conversation with Russian negotiator as standard thing. Now, what I imagine a Witkoff call looks like is basically, listen, guys, we can all make money here. You just have to blow sufficient smoke up Donald Trump's ass, and we got to put up some building with their family name on it and something else that makes them feel good, and we can get this done. But you've got Witkoff apparently behind the scenes has been negotiating in Miami with a friend of Putin on the Russian side. Now you have the conversations were leaked, and I think people are speculating that it was British intelligence that basically had, I guess, wiretapped these phones and leaked the conversations that were being had, I guess in an effort to undermine it. But sometimes Trump is slick, and he's like, yeah, I like compliments, and he's telling people to compliment me. What's the big deal here? I hand it to you, I guess, to fill in the details, and also just like specifically how creepy is it that I guess our own allies are, I guess, this that capable of hacking our conversations. Yeah,
right. That to me is a scandal on two levels. One, that the British are spying on Trump's personal envoy. That should be a massive scandal. This is supposed to be a NATO ally that they're spying and then leaking the conversations. Trump should be coming down on the Brits with an absolute hammer. Secondly, on the American side, how the hell are you this sloppy? You know, after the signal fiasco earlier in the administration, you would assume that communications would be absolutely on lockdown and that they would be very careful about how they're communicating. So, more just buffoonery and incompetence from the Trump administration as well. Now, on, I guess, the actual part of this story, it doesn't seem in any way like a scandal to me. This is another kind of Russiagate story where we got some big scoop, and it turns out that no, this is really no big deal. I kind of look at Witkoff a little bit like a used car salesman here. Who this is the person you negotiate with, but he's like, oh, I gotta go talk to the boss about that. I think it's a part of his negotiating tactic, right? To make the Russians feel like, hey, I'm on your side. I understand your position. Let me give you a little bit of information to help you, make your decision, make your calculation. But overall, right, he's not trying to undermine Trump to help the Russians get a better deal. He's trying to create the relationship with the Russians needed to get a deal done, to engage in diplomacy, right?
All right. So now this last one is total ADD. It's a clip that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, and then we're going to return to the Russia-Ukraine talks. I do have other questions for you. Before we do so, I have to take the sweatshirt off. I'm dying. It got hot in my studio. So the fans get a little strip show. Give me 1 second. There you go. And everyone can see my bald head. All right. So this one, it's something that I was talking about with Epstein file releases that you're going to hear a lot about. Well, we're doing what's according to law, and I was like, all right, well, it sounds like all these laws are essentially there to protect the deep state and keep us from retrieving information. None of these are laws that are actually in our interest, but you're going to hear about, well, we're going to release what we were legally allowed to release and nonsense along those lines. And I was going off on that on the last episode. If you guys want more on that topic, you can go and listen to it. But this was exactly in line with this theme. Let's roll the clip. It's Kash Patel.
On the Epstein files. The Epstein Files Transparency Act has a very tight deadline, 30 days to produce unclassified records. Will the FBI meet the 30-day deadline?
Well, we are working with our partners at the Department of Justice to produce, as we've always committed to producing what we can lawfully, legally produce. And we will continue to meet those metrics, reminding the public that there are court orders in place, protective orders, and orders to seal in place that legally prohibit the disclosure of information related to any investigation when there's a court order of that fashion. So we're working with DOJ to say if we can produce anything more.
As FBI director, will you commit to as few blacked out sections or redactions as possible?
We always do. We have in our productions to Congress, which have been historic to this year, and we'll treat every matter in the same fashion while also upholding always victims' rights. Victims' rights in any case, whether it's President Trump's case, this case, or any case, the victims' rights statutes are preeminent, and we will protect those victims at all costs.
All right, I'll let you go first. I already see you giggling at the ridiculousness of this. Go for it.
So I guess first, he doesn't even, answer the question like, yes, we're going to try to meet the deadline. And then he doesn't even say we're going to release as much as possible. He says, if we're going to release anything. I mean, that was absolutely stunning to me. Just how much they are, I guess, prepared to cover up here, and just overall, what a pathetic buffoon Kash Patel has turned out to be. Everybody is turning on this guy and hates him because he's clearly engaging in a cover up of the Epstein files, and maybe worse. And this is really sick that the Trump administration has done this during the Epstein files. So they keep going, victims' rights, but there's been no justice for the victims, right? Like, if you care about the victims, put somebody in jail, release the file so at least we could all jeer at all the pedophiles who are out there getting away with it. You're covering up for the pedophiles and you're saying it's for the victims. It's truly disgusting and infuriating.
Well, I'm hearing basically that they've got 3 lies that they're working with that is going to prevent disclosure. One is, it's what I've already pointed out. Well, we'll do everything according to the law. We're following the law. It's like the law is more important than actually trying to go after the criminals that were breaking all these laws and engaging in blackmail operations or pedophilia. And so they're not really concerned with justice for the American people or victims, and they're hiding behind this higher value of, well, we have to, and the laws are there to protect you. Those are the laws that you're talking about. Laws that are written so that that you guys don't have to disclose this stuff. You've got protecting the victims, which is the same as like ongoing investigations, which they might play that card too, of reopening investigations and going, well, this will get in the way of our investigations. And then he didn't say it here, but basically just agency embarrassment, or that it will undermine agencies, and so that we can't put out, which will obviously be the worst things held back. With all that said, what is your prediction for the Epstein storyline, let's say going into 2026? Do you think they're blacking out everything? Do you think some random individuals are going down? Like, it seems that the Trump administration is interested in making this storyline go away. Thomas Massie got a win here, and that they have to release information, and the American public are aware of this, are aware of the Epstein storyline and want more of it. What is your prediction for how it actually plays out?
I mean, it's so hard to make a prediction because the Trump administration has handled this whole thing so incompetently that I don't know. I mean, what I would assume they would do if they were competent is that they would give a pretty sizable chunk of the files, 4 or 5 people, names that people recognize, would end up, if not going to jail, at least having enough information that their reputation is significantly tarnished. At least one person in like the Trump camp or Republican camp, and then they could be the rest Democrats. And then from there, you got, you know, you kind of say it wasn't as much as everybody thought, but it turns out there was a little bit of a problem here and we addressed it. Now, I think they're going to just try to cover it up. I think they're going to try not to release it. And Marjorie Taylor Greene has really given Thomas Massie an absolute hammer in the House of Representatives. I think she left the Republicans with like a 1 vote majority at this point. And so, you know, if some lady has a baby, if somebody goes into the old folks home with dementia, they need every single Republican to vote on every single issue at this point in time. And so if Thomas Massie says, I'm not going to vote for a single initiative until you release the files, I mean, you're essentially at a point where any one Republican could bring Congress to a halt. I mean, I think they're going to have a lot of trouble just covering this up and thinking it's going to go away. And on top of that, enough of the Epstein stuff is leaking out at this point where it's not going to like be forgotten, right? Like there's going to be a news story just today. Robbie, I don't know if you're familiar with the book, the Israel Lobby by Mearsheimer and Walt.
I haven't read it. It's on my to-do list, but I am familiar with it.
This was originally released as a paper in 2006. And after it was released, Alan Dershowitz, who kept his pants on, and Jeffrey Epstein worked against and tried to smear Mearsheimer and Walt and try to get other academics to denounce that paper. And so, you know, there's just going to be an increasing number of stories about an increasing number of American elites that are coming out in their ties with Epstein, that this isn't going away. And so the worst thing for the Trump administration they could do is they could try and cover it up. But I think that's what they're going to do. And from there, it's going to, I think, be an absolute catastrophe for them in the Republican Party.
All right, I'm going to ask you a juicy question, and then we're going to move back on to Ukraine and some of the other topics I wanted to cover. You think Bannon's going to come out as being dirty?
I really don't know. I haven't looked into it enough. I find his whole role in all of this increasingly confusing. I guess I assumed Bannon would be far more on team release the files, and it turns out he actually has a bunch of tapes that he's holding on to. So I don't know what his role is. I'm sure his name is going to be in the files. Now, whether it's him doing anything at all related to children, underage girls, or just women in general, I don't know, but I'm sure he had associations with Jeffrey Epstein that go beyond even what's on the tapes that he has that he won't show the rest of us.
Well, to give the short on what that is, apparently he did a long interview series with Epstein that was not released, and he was claiming he was going to release in 2026.
I think it's like 8 hours total. It's a lot of footage.
But then it also seems like he had professional correspondence with Epstein in 2018 which was regarding advice on how to rehabilitate his own image after he was thrown out of the Trump administration, which might indicate the fact that he was not involved in any of the pedophilia stuff, but even once Epstein was kind of a noteworthy, dirty individual, he was willing to correspond with him because he was powerful enough that
Right.
I guess
he was a convicted sex criminal, like a
Yes.
felony level sex criminal. And it's amazing, right, Robbie, that all these kind of elites, Israeli prime ministers and other people in the US go to Jeffrey Epstein to like restore and rehabilitate their image. Like, you know, you would think that if you're trying to restore your image, the last person you would want to be associated with, particularly after the sex offense, would be Jeffrey Epstein, and yet they still went to him. It's baffling.
All right. So now, look, I came quite prepared here. I got my whole list of things that I wanted to get into. A lot of this stuff we've already covered regarding the Ukrainian peace talks, but let's start with this one. The timer Minich, I think I have that name right. The storyline, so he was caught basically classic government contractor scandal where I guess he's given out the jobs for contracting work and he's taking kickbacks, made $100 million doing so. Maybe I'll hand it to you. You can even let us know what his relationship with Zelensky was and the timing of this. Do you think that this was to try and pressure Zelensky? Do you think that there's going to be more characters taken down? Do you think once Zelensky leaves office, he himself is going to be found out to be dirty? Give us a little bit of the storyline of just like how corrupt Ukraine is and specifically what Zelensky's ties were to this guy.
Yeah, so I guess start off Zelensky's ties to the guy you mentioned is this guy co-owned the production studio that produced the I don't know if it was initially a Netflix show. It was a Ukrainian TV show, Servant of the People. And in that show, Zelensky's a star. He's a teacher. He gives a speech. It goes viral, and he ends up becoming president of Ukraine. And he kind of like becomes his character, right, in real life, and ends up getting elected of Ukraine kind of out of nowhere on this message of we got to end the conflict going on because there had been civil war going on in Ukraine for I guess 4 years when Zelensky was elected initially. And so anti-corruption platform and things like that, you know, kind of almost like a Trump-like figure, somebody coming in from the entertainment side, going into politics where he's not necessarily familiar. That's his path. And this was a former business partner of his. Now, the corruption scandal involved the energy ministry, the justice ministry, and Zelensky's former business partner. And basically, I think it was $100 million in total that were stolen. And basically, they were giving out contracts to build defenses for Ukraine's power plants. And then those defenses either weren't installed or a very cheap version of it was, right? Like they pay for $150,000 worth of air defenses and they get like 10,000, right? Like real significant corruption going on here. A lot of money is stolen. Now I understand that Zelensky's foreign business partner was able to get out of Ukraine and is now in Israel.
Unbelievable.
And I believe that Ukraine only sanctioned the Israeli individual and not actually the Ukrainian individual, which is a weird way that sanctions work. You sanction a person, but only one of their nationalities. And basically, he still has all of his money. The Ukrainian government even hasn't taken all of his money. Now, on the timing of this, I think this is more a result of kind of a dam breaking within Ukraine. Over the summer, Zelensky's Servant of the People Party, which now has a majority in the, I forget the name of the Rada, the Ukrainian legislator, the Rada. And they passed a bill that Zelensky signed into law that really neutered the anti-corruption agencies in Ukraine. It took away a lot of their power and oversight and put it in Zelensky's hands. And then there were the largest protests since the war broke out in Ukraine. And Zelensky ultimately had to bat down on that. So that's kind of this corruption scandal, his involvement, and why I think the timing of it is.
All right. Sorry for the distraction of me sitting down. I've been standing for an hour here. So with the timing, So do you think they're going to start going for more people? Like, are we going to see more of these stories?
I would imagine so. I mean, there's been a significant amount of corruption in Ukraine. That being said, when you have a country that's very, very corrupt like Ukraine is, I'm sure it takes a lot of time, a lot of resources to find that. And even if there's a lot of public support right now for the anti-corruption bureaus, I mean, it could take, months and months and months until they're able to address other areas. And also you kind of have this really perverse thing where, particularly for the European countries who have been giving all this money to Ukraine, who really should be the most upset about it, right? Like if your buddy comes to you and asks you for money to pay rent, and then you find out that he went and spent the money on drugs, like you should be really upset about that, right? But in this case, the Europeans are kind of they're trying to like kind of downplay it and not pay too much attention to it, because it really it's going to be unpopular with the European people, like the citizens of all those countries who are struggling themselves and say, why are we giving $100 billion to Ukraine if a significant chunk of that money is just going to be stolen by Zelensky's friends? Like, this isn't a good deal for us. And so while the leadership remains committed to the policy and more or less seem to want to cover this up, the people are going to be against it, and it's going to create more and more problems in Europe.
All right, so two more Ukraine questions, but one of the issues, I guess, with the new peace deal is whether or not Zelensky will have to hold elections. Now, what do you think Zelensky's actual political future is? Do you think he's going to escape off to Israel? Do you think they're going to have corrupt elections that he gets reelected? Do you think he's going to work out an agreement that it's going to be another 5 years till elections? What do you think happens to Zelensky?
Yeah, I mean, boy, it's hard to say. I think the people who would take Zelensky out for making a deal want him to keep fighting. I've often said that, Russia demands no Western troop presence in Ukraine. I think Trump needs to tell the Russians that, hey, if you want this deal to get done, there needs to be at least 100 Green Berets in Kiev to defend Zelensky from his own people, right? Like, somebody is going to have to, defend Zelensky that's not a Ukrainian while he is signing this agreement and getting it done. And even if they come to an agreement that says in 3 months you're going to hold elections, that means Zelensky needs to be in charge for 3 more months. I think this isn't like the path of what's right or what's just, but what's the path that's going to end the war the quickest would be, I think, Zelensky agreeing to allow elections in Ukraine and Trump informing Zelensky that he's just not going to run, that he's going to retire and he could go live in Miami or in the Poconos or in Israel, or, if he feels to live outside of the U.S. umbrella, fine by us too, but that Zelensky is basically going to go away. He's going, to live a nice life. He'll have plenty of cocaine, all the women that he could pay for with all the money he's already stolen, but nobody is ever going to hear a peep from him again. He's just gone, right? Like, no more problem. I don't think we're going to go down that path. I think Zelensky is, for whatever reason, determined to hold on to power. He does not seem to be in any way looking for an exit. I don't know if it's insanity, if it's corruption, that he's just stealing so much, he just wants to keep on stealing, if he kind of believes the image the West has created for him as the new Winston Churchill, the new FDR, this very powerful leader. And it's like, he's concerned about his legacy. I have no idea. I don't think he's going to step away. I don't think Trump is going to pressure him to step away. I'm not even sure Trump really understands just how complicated it would be for Zelensky to agree to end the war, and understand that he would need to guarantee Zelensky some sort of personal protection in order to get this war to end. So I don't think it's going to go the smooth way. I think it's going to be bumpy. I think Zelensky's going to hold on to power, and eventually they're going to hold elections, and I do think he'll be gone at that point.
All right. One last Ukraine question before we do. Luckily, I'm able to bring this content because I'm backed by the Kratom Lobby of America, YoKratom.com. Only place in the world you can get an entire kilo of Kratom for just $60. And before I move on with the next question, why don't you let everyone know where they can follow you and find all of your direct content?
Yeah, best place to follow me is on at Kyle Lanslone _. I do 2 shows, Conflicts of Interest and the Kyle Lanslone Show. Kyle Lanslone Show is live every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 4:45 Eastern. And then I also write articles at the Libertarian Institute, antiwar.com, and judgenap.com.
There you go.
Everything published to my ads. So
Man,
that's the easy way to do it.
You're busy, dude. 3 podcasts a week and articles. That's great. What happened to the Ukrainian mineral deal? Did that just get thrown out, or is that currently why we're funding them is because there was a mineral deal, or was that just like some Trump ADD thing that was his last idea for, how we were going to end this war or fund the war? But whatever happened to that? That was the last episode you and I did, and I haven't heard about it since.
I don't think I've heard very much about it since either. I guess a big part of the issue was there was really never a viable path to develop any of these mineral extraction companies in the first place. And so maybe once like somebody put the business plan in front of Trump, he realized it was a total fraud and it just went away. It could also be something that's cooking in the background. The U.S. did recently approve a sale of, I think, a few $100 million to Ukraine, and they didn't say how that was going to be paid for. I don't think the weapons are going to be delivered for a couple of years, but I'm sure that somewhere somebody in Kiev or in the White House is trying to work on something there, but I haven't read any particular stories that it's developing in any kind of way at this point. I'm guessing that if Trump's peace plan does get agreed to, a big part of that was using frozen Russian assets to rebuild Ukraine, but the U.S. getting a 50% stake in a lot of the joint ventures going on there. So I would wonder if maybe this would just essentially supersede the minerals agreement, and then they would just move forward with the new peace plan.
All right. Totally changing gears here. And if I hit you with any topic that you're not familiar with or not ready to comment on, we can just skip to the next one. But I was curious if you could give us the rundown of what just happened in Minnesota, because I guess there were claims that there was basically government funds that were finding its way to maybe it was Somalian terrorists or some other terror group, including even the mayor was involved in some NGO scheme. I just saw the scattered headlines, and I'm always very curious about these NGO storylines, particularly when Democrats are involved. So I was curious if you had more details on that one.
I missed this one, Robbie. I'm actually excited to go look up and get the details of this one after I get off here, because this. All right,
there you go. I'll have to follow up with you on that one, because it did seem like a juicy storyline and quite a blunder of what we need is free stuff for this poor group and these individuals, and then just going right to apparently terrorists. All right, so let's move on to the situation in Venezuela. So obviously they're trying to sell us on the idea that all drugs are coming into this country from Venezuela, and that these are, these are now narco terrorists. And so therefore don't be concerned with Mexico or any of the other countries that bring drugs into our country. We have to go overthrow Venezuela. Now, I'd even seen an article at one point that Maduro is ready to basically just step down and be like, hey, you guys can have the country. We don't need to have a fight over this. I don't know if that's true, but I did see that article, I think, over at Zero Hedge. Give us the scoop. What is the government actually after in Venezuela that they seem to be ramping up our troop presence and are blowing up of boats over there and seemingly looking like they want a war in Venezuela? What is the actual agenda there, and what is going on?
Okay, so I'll just let you know my theory. And so this policy, I think, is being almost 100% driven by Marco Rubio. Yes, Donald Trump did try a regime change in Venezuela during his first administration, but this was like the typical half-assed regime change, like color-coded operation they try all over the world. what we're talking about here is actually going to war with Venezuela, not the CIA finding some dupe and having him declare himself president, and then some billionaire puts on a conference and tries to donate a bunch of aid and there's a riot. Like, I mean, like that wasn't like a real threat at war, anything that would tie up the US. Why I think they're prepared to go to war this time is because Marco Rubio wants regime change in Venezuela. And the narrative is going to be it's about the oil. I don't think it's about the oil. I think it's all about Cuba. Rubio and a lot of other Republicans believe that the communist government of Cuba has only been able to last through the since almost close to 7 decades now of American embargo on their small island off our coastline because of the support that they've gotten from other communists. For a long time that was the Soviet Union, but most recently it's been Venezuela. And for Rubio, it's really about regime change in Havana, not even Caracas. And so there's all kinds of interest, right? The reason that a policy actually gets implemented isn't just because it benefits the weapons lobby, the oil lobby, the banks, or some pharma. It's because it benefits a lot of all of them, right? Even if it doesn't directly involve their product, it probably helps their investments. And so, of course, there's oil giants that are going to be very excited about this. There's mining companies that are going to be very excited about. The arms makers are going to be very excited about. The neocons are absolutely losing their minds. They're so ecstatic that they're basically sound like it's run up to the Iraq War again. So that's really why I think it's about, though. The drugs is all a lie. That Maduro is evil or that he's a dictator is mostly a lie. I mean, he is a dictator, but he's not like the worst despot in the world. We deal with the Saudis. We could deal with Maduro. No problem. I'm not even sure he rigged the last election. I think that's at least disputable. So all their attacks against him are absolute frauds. And I really think it's about all about Cuba.
Interesting. You see, I was just speculating that it was about oil and kind of just trying to keep Russia and China off of our hemisphere. And I was curious if there's any sort of a pitch, if I was a deep state kook, that we did a great job of tying down Russia and Ukraine, and as a result, we were able to flip Syria, we were able to go bomb Iran, and now we're going to go take over Venezuela and basically, shore up our oil reserves or our access to oil versus other people. I don't believe that that's a good investment, but I leave that to you to kind of take on and debunk.
Oh, I'm sure there. I'm pretty sure I've read it somewhere, either the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. People make that argument. I'm sure people are making that argument in the White House. I don't think it would work out that well. If anything, I think Russia would kind of see an opportunity to do in Venezuela what the U.S. did to Russia and Ukraine, where now there's a conflict that we're entangled in our own hemisphere. And from the Russian perspective, they have plenty of surplus military equipment at this point, and certainly they're very familiar with tactics of NATO-trained armies, and so they would be able to provide some pretty crucial help to Caracas if they chose to. I don't know exactly how Russia will respond. Sometimes the way people think Russia and China will respond to things on the global event and confronting the U.S., they tend to just say, it's not worth our investment, and to walk away from it. And that is why I think Beijing would do. Beijing will say, fine, you take Venezuela, we'll go, build some ports in Colombia and gain some influence that way. Or, we'll go to Peru or Ecuador, or any number of other Latin American countries, right? Like China isn't, I don't think, going to waste too much time or energy defending Venezuela, but Russia might.
All right. So a couple more topics that I wanted to cover. Let's start with this one. So he had Donald Trump is, I would say Mark Kelly struck first. He goes out there and he makes a statement of that people in the military should ignore illegal orders. And I think he was accompanied by other senators, but I guess his name's kind of been floated to the top of the list of people that were making the statement. Donald Trump basically comes back and goes, you're telling the military to defy orders. they were it's all like very Trumpian language of like, I said doll hairs, not dollars. I didn't say to ignore orders. I said to ignore illegal orders. But Donald Trump's a little bit right to be like, well, why are you even making this statement? Do you see this escalating? Who do you see as being more in the wrong in terms of instigating this fight? Do you think that this one just brushes away within a month? What do you think kind of happens in terms of, because this is where you start getting Civil War type talk of,
Right.
oh my God, is the army actually going to start defying orders? And that's that's when really regimes actually get overthrown, is if the military decides to side with someone other than the president. I don't think we're anywhere near there. But big storyline. Curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, kind of. I guess I'm of two minds. My first is that, right, you shouldn't follow illegal orders, right? This was Nuremberg trials, right? I was just following orders isn't an excuse for committing war crimes. And currently the U.S. over the past 2.5 months now has destroyed, I think, 22 boats in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific, killing at least 83 people. They have no idea who they've killed. The people who have survived the attacks, I think 3 or 4 in total now, have been released. We haven't been held for, being drug traffickers. And look, even if they are trafficking drugs, they're just probably some poor kids from a coastal town in Venezuela or Colombia. It's not like they're kingpins or anybody that really has anything to do with it, right? It would be like throwing a grenade at the kid selling crack on the corner, thinking that you're actually addressing the drug problem. You're not. So even if they were doing what they say they're doing, it still wouldn't work. But it's also illegal. Rand Paul has called it extrajudicial killings, and I agree with that. And I don't think that troops should follow those orders. That being said, I do think it was bad that you had 6 members of one political party issue a clearly political message to the troops, telling them to disobey unlawful orders without providing any guidance on what they mean by that, right? And so I think that your concerns are actually quite valid, that this is the kind of thing where it could lead to military coups or civil war in the United States if you really do want to empower the military to be its own moral actor on such vague terms. So I see this one both ways. I don't have like a very clear or definitive take on this. And of course, Donald Trump's reaction was completely out of line and over the top, right?
Of course. All right, I'll shout out Chris Faig on that one because we were talking about it on the green room, and I hadn't really thought about the Civil War escalations, and that was a comment he had made to me. All right, let's take a couple comments, and then I got 2 more questions for you. This is from Gary saying, Rob, save Minnesota. Read over $1 billion in fraud. The latest one is wild, involves autism centers and Somalian immigration. And I will have to follow up with Kyle after. I'm sure he digs in and writes some articles about it. Runaway Slav. Zelensky said he wants to turn Ukraine into a second Israel. They have Jew-only towns in Ukraine now with checkpoints, and all troops getting killed are Christians. I don't know if that's true. I think he probably just meant he wanted money forever.
So I can maybe provide a little bit of context for that. There is a town in Israel, or in Ukraine, excuse me. I forget the name of it. I believe
it's got to be no, I know it's got to be Uman, right?
Yes,
that's for sure.
Yes.
Uman. Okay, listen. All right, Uman is a village of like some legendary like Hasidic rabbi, and I'm sure that there's like a yearly presence of people at the grave there. But more specifically, a lot of people will go there for the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah, and so I'm sure that there might be some small areas with a good amount of Jews and maybe some security presence, but I don't think they got a whole town there.
You just described exactly what I was going to say, is that they do have like this pilgrimage, and during that time, I think even Israel provides some support to Ukraine.
By the way, I also think it's like
that little town.
I think it's a moneymaker because from what I've heard about going there, people like rent beds in people's homes for like a lot of money. So I actually think that one might be a rare instance of maybe good for the local economy and not the Jews just kicking people out of an area that they want to occupy.
No, you pretty much got the whole story right just by guessing, Robbie. That was pretty impressive.
There you go. Like I said, you listen to Run Your Mouth, and sometimes I pull good information out of my ass. All right. So last question that I got for you is, what's the latest on the Gaza ceasefire? Do you think? I mean, we already know that it's been somewhat violated, but what do you think's actually going to go on there, and how soon till Israel starts trying to go back to war with Iran? What's the Middle East predictions for 2026?
Yeah, so the ceasefire is definitely in trouble. Israel has conducted a couple days of large strikes in the past week. I think they killed 20 people on one day, 20-something people on another day. That might have been like Monday and Sunday, or Saturday and Sunday. Sometimes the time zone changes makes it a little bit difficult for me to remember. But so the ceasefire is really not a ceasefire, right? Because that would mean the end of firing, where Israel is either bombing artillery shells or shooting Palestinians and killing them every single day of this ceasefire. I think at least one Palestinian has died, and over 350 total now, and it's at 6.5 weeks. So that's a pretty high rate of killing for a ceasefire. And additionally, Israel is destroying the homes in the area of Gaza that they still hold. They're flattening all the buildings, which is something they agree not to do, because if you were going to allow the people to return to that area, they would need homes to go to. And so that's a pretty good sign. And there's more and more statements of the Israelis saying that they're going to not ever allow Palestinians back beyond what is now known as the yellow line. About 42% of Gaza, Palestinians still have access to, and the rest is in Israeli military zone. Now, the other thing going on, Robbie, is it's getting into winter in Gaza, and that means there's a lot of rain. And so you have what was a very densely packed area, the Gaza Strip, now less than half of its initial size. Almost nobody is in homes. They're all in tents, and everything is flooding. So it's an absolute humanitarian disaster right now. There's a little bit more food getting in, but everybody is saying that it's still not enough. And when I say everybody, like World Food Program, UNICEF, Doctors Without Borders, all the different NGOs with actual teams on the ground in Gaza that hand out, that distribute the aid, are reporting this. And then hospitals are still short of medical supplies. They're still not letting in new tents. There's a lot of Palestinians that have been living in the same tent for 2 years now. These are canvas tents, so they're ripping, they're tearing, they're getting old. I'm sure like they get wet, they dry, you get dry rot, stuff like that. So it's an absolute nightmare scenario for the Palestinians. And I guess if I were really, really cynical, right? If I were like Netanyahu's right-wing advisor trying to tell him how to conduct the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, I would tell him at this point, you really don't have to do anything. Over the long term, the problem is going to take care of itself. The people there have no infrastructure. And from what we've learned over the past 2 years, as long as there's not a substantial number of Palestinian children starving to death, the world is going to let Israel do whatever it wants. And long term, all those Palestinians can't live in Gaza the way it is now. And so they don't have to do anything but wait for them to either leave or die. I kind of think that Netanyahu is at some point in the next few months going to elect to go back to war. However, the other thing going on is they've really increased military operations both in Lebanon, and then today they announced a major military operation in the West Bank to go along with all the other different raids and attacks they've been doing on Palestinians in the West Bank. So it may be that Netanyahu at this point has decided that the Palestinians can't live long-term like they are in Gaza. We're okay with putting down the back burner for a little bit. We're going to hit some more Hezbollah leaders. We're going to continue our slow annexation on the West Bank, and we're going to get ready for the next war with Iran.
That's a lot. On the topic, just because it just came up on part of the problem.
Great
listen,
show.
Well, thank you. I want to make this clear. Since the beginning of this war, I've talked out against what Israel has done. I don't support it. I think it's tragic and horrible. And I also do not suggest that there isn't a aid problem within Gaza. With that said, I do have a question for you, which was I was once watching recently footage of I guess bodies that were returned to Gaza that the people of Gaza were burying, and I noticed while I was watching it that nobody seemed to be like famished. Is that just that I'm seeing like Hamas members that had access to food that other people didn't have access to? I guess I'm just wondering, like, sometimes when I see pictures of the region, or even like there was one video when a hostage was being given back to Israel, and you saw people kind of like parade in the streets around the car. How come there seems to be a disparity of, and obviously I'm working off of random images. This is not like numbers or statistical evidence. And there are clearly people on lines for food, and I've seen horrible pictures of kids trying to, reach in and get some rice. But why does I guess when I hear starving, I think of like the pictures I saw of kids in Yemen, or like pictures that I saw of people like in concentration camps at the end of World War II. Why is it that like I occasionally see pictures of people in Gaza that don't seem to be what I would like what I would classify in my head as like, here's a starving person?
Yeah, so I'm guessing there's a couple things here, and I mean, unfortunately, there's been really no Western press in Gaza, so to get the full narrative is kind of hard. But I do know that just in general, the food distribution, right, isn't what would you say, like flat across the strip, right? It's not like if one person has been eating, it doesn't mean everybody has, or something like that. And so I think it's like more pockets of people that are in more difficult to reach areas, or who are packed into these tent cities. But there is still some food that's occasionally commercially available in Gaza. And there are some Palestinian families who had some legacy wealth, who I'm sure find different smuggling network kinds of things where they are able to get either small amounts of food, or to exchange where wealth they have for money to buy new food in Gaza, things like that. So there certainly are Palestinians who aren't in famine conditions, starving to death, or anything like that. At the same time, I've certainly seen pictures, video evidence of large number of children who are clearly malnourished, maybe not like starving, although I have seen pictures that do resemble the kids you were talking about in Yemen, with the protruding bellies that are 4, 5, 6 years old, and you can see the bones in their arm and things like that. So that certainly is happening in Gaza. I think they've recorded 300 and something starvation deaths since October 7th, 2023. So there is starvation. Also, the other thing I might just speculate at here is that the people who are, going out and celebrating in the streets when there's a ceasefire, or when hostages are being released, or who are gathering around a scene where there's cameras and things going on, are probably people who have like the energy to do that, who have the time to do that, where the Palestinians who really are on the verge of starving, who are really struggling, are just focused on getting food, or are too weak to travel. And that's another piece of all of it. A lot of the people that are starving are people who are either like children who have lost parents, or older people who don't have younger relatives to care for them anymore. And whenever you do have a famine, those of course are going to be the people who starve to death first in any area.
All right, I swear, last question. I do value your time, and we download a lot of information. I'm holding you long here, but does the press ever get into Gaza? Do we ever like kind of have, media companies just with like open access, and we get more of the full story? Or does Israel figure out how to like kind of keep a blackout on that forever?
Yeah, so Israel has not allowed an independent journalist, not independent in the sense of like independent media, but just like a journalist without an Israeli military escort has not entered Gaza since the war started. When a couple months ago, when the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was going on and people were really talking about the genocide, they did have some press in. on a big tour. I think Mike Huckabee went in and some other Israeli officials went in. So there was that. And then I believe it was in the spring of 2024. I wrote an article on this. They actually let a CNN reporter in on a guided tour because CNN had been doing some reporting on Israel destroying Palestinian cemeteries. And CNN is so stupid. They're like, this is kind of strange. And not like, oh, this is clearly evidence of a genocide. This is what happened in this country to the Native Americans. We erased their burial grounds. That way they don't have any connection to the land anymore, right? Like that's what they're trying to do. And so the IDF brought in, I think his name is Jamie Dimon. It's not the banking guy. It's a different guy. He works for CNN. And they took him on this tour and they were like, oh, here's why they're destroying the cemeteries. Here's a tunnel and here's a tunnel. And then CNN did a report and they were like, the tunnel points were nowhere near the cemetery. It had nothing to do with the cemetery whatsoever. And so I think Israel realized that if they do let in anybody in the Western press, even on a guided tour at this point, that the evidence, the destruction is so bad that there's no way Israel is going to like come out with a good image, right? Like it's just there's nothing they could do but keep the Western press out.
All right. I know it. Can I ask you one more? If you got to go, you got to go. Can I?
I got like 5 minutes.
All right.
So
last one. I promise. What did Jonathan Pollard actually do? Like, what's the real Jonathan Pollard story?
I mean, I don't have like all the details. I've only read shorter articles on it, not like, a book chapter or anything like that. But he was in the US. I believe he was with Navy or Navy intelligence. And he passed secrets to the Israelis during the Cold War. I believe it was in the 70s. And he got caught. He went to jail. I believe it's fairly clear that his motivation was purely financial. Like, I don't know if the Russians, or if he would have like sold the secrets to the Soviets, but I think he was willing to sell the secrets to anybody who wasn't a direct enemy willing to pay the United States. It was only after he went to jail that he kind of gained like a cult following in Israel. I mean that like in the like popular sense, not the literal sense. And then he further embraced the state of Israel because those were the only people advocating for his release. And in doing so over the years, he made a lot of powerful friends, including our current ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, who have lobbied presidents for his release. And then during the COVID lockdowns, at some point, he was released, flown on a private plane owned by Miriam Adelson from the U.S. to Israel, and welcomed by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the tarmac. And so he is a traitor to the United States of America and has embraced Israel as his home of choice.
There you go. All right. Thank you so much for the time. We'll do it again in a couple of months if you'll grace us with your presence. And everybody go check out Kyle's stuff. He does great work, and it's nice because you actually do your homework and I get to download the information. So I always appreciate it.
Anytime, Robbie. Always love coming on. Huge fan of your show, Part of the Problem, your stand-up. It's been a while since I've gotten to a porch tour, so I definitely need to do one next year at some point.
Please do. All right. Later, bud.
See ya.